A fairly quiet end to Saturday and into the early hours of Sunday, though cloud does thicken across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland later, with some patchy outbreaks of rain here, but for most it will be dry. Temperatures are largely staying in double figures, but a bit more comfortable for sleeping compared to recent nights. So Sunday morning, cloudy picture across western Scotland first thing, outbreaks of rain here, but brighter towards the northeast, the Northern Isles as well, seeing plenty of morning sunshine. The cloud extends across parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, with outbreaks of rain, though largely light in nature. Drier further south and east across the rest of England and Wales, just perhaps one or two light showers, some hazy sunshine in places too. And as we head through the day on Sunday, we'll see further areas of cloud and rain pushing northeastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, perhaps northern England too. Much of the rest of England and Wales largely staying dry, but there will be quite a lot of cloud around, perhaps one or two showers. Best of the sunshine across southern and southeastern areas, temperatures here reaching around 23 or 24. Cooler further north and west you go, 16 or 17. With breezy conditions across western Scotland. On Monday, we can see heavy rain across Northern Ireland, Scotland, some local disruption possible due to that heavy rain through the day, with the Met Office warning out until around 9 p.m. Drier further south and east, temperatures are reaching around 26 or 27, so feeling a little warmer, then cooler and more unsettled later in the week.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have said storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Oh, I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good evening to you. It is 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight.
I was on my couch with my kids and they're sitting there, we're watching on live TV, and I looked down at my computer for a second as I was working on something, and I hear the shot.
The inside family story of Donald Trump's assassination by his son Eric. Ben Leo spoke to him in Scotland this afternoon. Meanwhile, if you thought Joe Biden was bad, his replacement Kamala Harris is worse. Donald Trump's no angel, but if woke Harris wins, America is finished. And did the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, do more harm than good in his reaction to the appalling riots in Southport? I'll be joined by a retired senior cop who will be laying down the law about just why we're seeing chaos on Britain's streets. Busy show tonight. Good to have your company. Get the kettle on. 2 hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. First, the news headlines and my co-star earlier today, the brilliant Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much. And now for the serious stuff. Good evening. The top stories. Merseyside Police has condemned the violence and disorder that happened in Liverpool city centre today, and officers remain in the area to monitor the ongoing situation. 750 protesters and another 750 counter-protesters clashed today, and objects were also thrown at police officers and their vehicles. Merseyside Police also earlier said a number of officers were injured during the serious disorder. People threw various items, including bricks and bottles, at officers. And one officer on a police motorbike was pushed from his bike and assaulted. In Hull, around 100 people gathered outside a migrant hotel being guarded by police, where a window was also smashed. At least 3 people were led away in handcuffs as demonstrators faced counter-protesters in Nottingham. And meanwhile, police in riot gear were deployed in Belfast amid tense exchanges between protesters and an anti-racism rally, with a small number of fireworks being thrown. Well, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has warned people taking part in disorder across England that those breaking the law will pay the price, telling them thuggery has no place on the streets. And the Prime Minister has also said that the police have his full support to take action against extremists who are attempting to sow hate by intimidating communities, as he held emergency talks with ministers today over the unrest in parts of England. Videos posted on social media last night showed a former police office ablaze in Sunderland, while a mosque was also targeted. Vehicles were overturned and set on fire, and 5 police officers were injured, with 4 hospitalised and 10 people arrested for offences including violent disorder and burglary. Well, Yvette Cooper says police have the government's full backing to take the action they need.
Well, criminal violence and disorder has no place on Britain's streets. We've been clear to the police that they have our full backing in taking the strongest possible action against perpetrators, including we're making sure that there are more prosecutors, there are sufficient prison places, and also that the courts stand ready, because anyone who engages in this kind of disorder needs to be clear that they will pay the price.
Now, GB News has travelled to Aberdeenshire to speak with Eric Trump, the former president's son. And you can see the full interview on Mark Dolan's show in just a moment, but here's a snippet from their conversation.
What I can tell you is my father had so much respect for the Queen, as did I. My mom knew so many of them for years. I think you probably know that. Had a great relationship with Diana and everyone else. And, you know, that's a very sacred kind of institution. And you can happily have those 2 back. We'll happily send them back from America. You can have them back over here, but I'm not sure if you guys want them any more than we might not want them anymore. They feel like they're on a little bit of an island of their own. But listen, you can always have bad actors in anything. You can always have, you know, spoiled apples in every orchard. But the institution of the royal family is beautiful, and it's something that's really actually admired by a lot of Americans, and I think that should be protected. And
that full interview on the Mark Dolan show next.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Welcome to a busy Mark Dolan tonight. In the big story, did the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, do more harm than good in his reaction to the appalling riots in Southport? I'll be joined by a retired senior cop who'll be laying down the law about just why we are seeing chaos on Britain's streets. Plus, as you've just seen there, the inside family story of Donald Trump's attempted assassination by his son Eric. The brilliant Ben Leo spoke to him in Scotland this afternoon. And in my take at 10, in an hour's time, you won't want to miss this. This is Box Office TV, folks. The Hugh Edwards scandal shines a light on establishment media and the efforts of some of the country's highest profile broadcasters to defend the now disgraced BBC star. Along with The Sun, we called it out here on this programme a year ago, and I'll be giving my final verdict on a story which has shocked a nation and rocked our national state broadcaster. Plus, the most important part of the show, your messages, they come straight to my laptop, gbnews.com/your say, and this show has a golden rule: we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. A big 2 hours to come, including that big Trump interview. But we start with my big opinion. Kamala Harris has replaced Joe Biden in the race for the White House in November. So let's start with the positives, I should say. This is a woman that doesn't have severe dementia or suffer from shocking cognitive decline like her predecessor. So Kamala Harris's brain works. Fantastic. But that's about it. Whilst Joe Biden's actions were becoming increasingly confused and indecipherable, there is no ambiguity about what kind of president Kamala Harris would be. As the person responsible for the US southern border, in which over 10 million people have entered America illegally since 2020, she will clearly pursue an effective open borders policy in the United States. Now, why would that be? Is it an attempt to gerrymander American democracy and flood the country with so many migrants that the Democrats stay in power forever? Is it incompetence, with the Biden administration having simply failed to protect their national boundaries? Or is it philosophical? Perhaps Kamala Harris believes that borders are a bad thing. If so, that's fine. But understand that is communism. Welcome to the parallel universe that Kamala Harris inhabits. Now, it's patently obvious to anyone with eyes and ears that Joe Biden has not been running the country for the last 4 years. But whoever has enjoyed the unquestioning support of Harris as vice president. She owns the eye-watering inflation which has made misery for ordinary Americans. She owns the money printing which has seen US debt spiral to the point where this once great nation is approaching bankruptcy. She owns the wokery in America's public institutions, with primary school kids being told they're racist because of their skin colour, or asked which of 100 genders they think they might be today. If Harris becomes the president, she will be the wokest president in history. Don't take my word for it. Here she is in action.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
May God help us. Her strange self-help guru act of incoherent ramblings is also enough to make you want to slash your wrists. Take a listen.
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
But in our country, we need you to be Mamala of the country.
And I eat no for breakfast.
360, when you're in the mirror, do you know what you see?
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
I'm so Julie.
Mamma mia. And then there is the random and quite unnerving laughter.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context.
Terrifying. If she wins, Harris will continue the forever war against Russia. Now, don't get me wrong, the invasion was profoundly wrong. But Trump, for all his faults, has made it very clear that he will seek a peace deal with Putin. No such words of comfort from the belligerent Harris. It's almost like there's an industry in America that profits from war. Probably just a conspiracy theory. Now, I'm no cheerleader of Donald Trump. I doubt that he's fit for high office, to be honest. He's erratic. He's, well, got a strange relationship with the truth and probably has a mild personality disorder. And I do wish that America had an option like the heroic Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, who refused crazy lockdowns and mask and vaccine tyranny during COVID, keeping his state free and open, with the same or better outcomes than places like California that lock down hard for the duration. Plus, Ron DeSantis calls Florida the state where woke goes to die. My dream. But in life, you have to work with what you're given. And the choice between the wokest president in history, Kamala Harris, and the flawed but ideologically sound and economically sensible Donald Trump will be a no-brainer for millions in November. Why does all of this matter to you and me here in the UK? Well, because the US president is our president too. Given that whoever occupies the office is the leader of the free world and Britain's closest military, diplomatic and economic ally. Now, Mark Dolan tonight will feature two interviews with Donald Trump's son, Eric. Part 1 at 9:30 and part 2 at 10:30, just after the papers. And it's been conducted by my excellent colleague, Ben Leo. Now, we'll look forward to that. Like father, like son, it's a cracking interview. I admired Barack Obama as a statesman. Yes, I did. So shoot me. Probably shouldn't say that. And Bill Clinton had his talents when he wasn't chasing tail. Like Hillary said, he's a hard dog to keep on the porch. But in this race for the White House, Donald Trump is the lesser of two evils by a significant margin. You see, Donald Trump wants to make America great again. All Kamala Harris will do is make America break again. Your reaction, what is your opinion of Kamala Harris? Do you like the idea that she might be the next US president? gbnews.com/your say, reacting to my big opinion. A very old friend of mine, White House correspondent John Christopher Bua, live from Washington. JCB, good to see you. You're a wise man. I'm sure you're worried about President Kamala Harris as much as I am.
I am absolutely ecstatic about Kamala Harris. She is brilliant. She is very forthcoming. She was a fabulous prosecutor. She was the attorney general for the state of California, where she went after people like Donald Trump, felons, and put them away. She has traveled the world. She is respected worldwide. She is actually the same generation as your prime minister, and I think they will get along. I know he was over here a while ago.
Yeah, he's pretty woke too.
White House when he sat and talked with Joe Biden. And I think we are thrilled that she has taken over the mantle, and that Joe Biden, as much as I knew him, as you say last week, I'm a good friend, but I love him dearly. But he did the right thing, the patriotic thing. He passed the torch, as JFK would say, to a new generation of Americans. And Kamala Harris, who represents so much positivity, women's health, people of color, and we do know what people of color means. We don't have to make it up like Trump says, oh, is she black now? Now she's black. Oh, good. He's pathetic. His son, I have to say, it seems that stupidity doesn't fall far from the tree. He was very unimpressive on that golf course. And I know it's a good get for you. And I think the world of you. And I love being on your show. And I'll never really give you a tough time because your hair is so god darn cute. Anyway, we're happy to be with you. The weather here is 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And I know over there it's not very good. So why don't you come on over, spend some of the election time with us, Mark, and we'll go out and have a few good ones together.
Well, perhaps we can go to the hairdressers together, and you can mimic my style. But JCB,
I will.
The bottom line is,
your hair.
I had a bit of a fight with former Trump aide Sebastian Gorka just a couple of weeks ago. It was actually a video that went viral. It broke the internet because Gorka said that Kamala Harris is only there because she's black and has, and I quote, a vagina. Now, I called him out on that. I said that was sexist and deeply offensive. I was shocked by his remarks. So look, Kamala Harris is an accomplished person. As you say, a top lawyer, and she's now the vice president of the most successful country in the history of the world. So I will give you that. But let's just take one example. She was charged with policing the southern border in the United States.
Not true.
Last year alone, 3.5 million people entered America illegally. That's a fail.
Let's stop right here, because I have too much respect for you to let you get away with saying something wrong. She was not charged with the border. She was not the border czar. She was sent to South American countries, Central American countries, to work with them to get issues in their country.
And how's that going?
More capable of making issues here. And what did Trump do? He stopped the legislation in Congress where all these things must go through, because it would have been a benefit to Joe Biden. That's villainous. And he also throws out his epithets. He called Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States, a bum. I know you British people don't use those kinds of words. You're respectful, and I respect you, and I think that was just villainous. And I think what Gorka said is, I won't even touch that.
OK, well, yes, I wouldn't touch it if I were you. Not if you've got any sense on you. Stay with us if you can, please, JCB, because with me in the studio is a man that has shaken hands with a Trump today. Does Eric have his father's presence?
He's very tall, let me tell you that. I'm 6'2". Yeah. But Eric towers over me.
And did he give you a Trump-style handshake that you couldn't get out of?
No, he's quite firm. He was a solid handshake, but no, he's a great presence. He very much looks like his father, although he's very eloquent and much more a softer aura than his dad, but still very intelligent, very sharp, on the ball, passionate.
Now, we don't want to give away too much because the interview's going to go out in two parts, around 9:30 and around 10:30, straight after the papers. But tell me about some of the aspects of the chat that you're quite excited about.
So I was trying hard to draw some, behind all the MAGA stuff and, you know, he's going to be the best president in the world, I was trying to draw some emotion out of him. I was trying to drill down into the person and the father and the grandfather behind the political, you know, machine that we see on the news and in the media. And he gave some touching moments about the instance he found out his father had been shot at the rally a couple of weeks back. He gave some great colour about how he was, I won't spoil it too much, but sitting at home with his children and he was watching it unfold live on TV.
Wow.
He spoke about the loyalty of Nigel Farage, the friendship, and how much his father appreciates that friendship. And keenly, J.D. Vance, his vice presidential pick, I said to him, did your father make a mistake picking J.D. Vance? Because this is the man who once called your father America's Hitler. He gave some great background into the pick. And also, very crucially, the comments from not just David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary now, but a dozen of the current cabinet members who in the past have spoken very disparagingly about Donald Trump, calling him a racist, a neo-Nazi sympathiser, a Ku Klux Klan friend, and so on and so on. I read out some of those comments directly to Eric Trump, and he addressed them to me in the interview.
Oh, brilliant stuff. Listen, before you go, what's great about the interview, there's some political scoops in there, but also we see the sort of human side of Donald Trump through his kids, don't we? Do you have the impression, having met Eric, that he loves his dad, that he's fond of his dad, that he's proud of his father?
I think Donald Trump is a hero to his kids, Eric and Don Jr. and Ivanka and the others. And I said to Eric, it's a testament to someone's character, how their kids have been brought up. Eric gave some colour about their childhood. He said, again, I'm not going to spoil it because you can see in the clips, but he gave some information on how he was raised, the advice he gave him as a child, and how he's now grown up to be a very solid, hard-working, passionate man who, in his own right, does very well. This guy isn't just Donald Trump's son. You know, he's a multi-millionaire businessman himself.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, look, congratulations on a fabulous interview, which I cannot wait to air at 9:30 and also 10:30. Here are some of Eric Trump's remarks about the subject of my big opinion tonight, Kamala Harris.
You know, it's funny, the media was mocking her. They spent the last 4 years mocking her, and then all of a sudden, you know, Biden's forced out, and all of a sudden she walks on water. It's really an amazing thing. But generally speaking, in our country, you know, people don't trust the media anymore. They don't, you know. For the last 3.5 years, they were talking about how Biden was a vibrant, articulate, well-spoken, healthy man. He walks out on stage at a debate, and everybody realizes that that's just not true. And they knew it wasn't true, but he walks on a stage and it just reinforces the fact that it wasn't true. They realized two things, that Kamala Harris was lying to them and that the media was lying to them.
John Christopher Boer, back to you in the United States. Your reaction to what Eric Trump had to say about Kamala Harris, your new best friend?
Well, I do have to say this. I live very closely to Ivanka and her husband, and my traffic for the Secret Service will warrant that. We couldn't get through our streets. And, you know, we're happy for her. I have to say something. You know, I'm an ordinary man, Henry Higgins. And I have to say, I feel for Eric Trump. I feel for him because he's got nowhere to go. And he's wrong. He's supporting his dad, which I'm glad he is. But he's supporting someone where he has no brain, no heart, and no soul. And it's becoming very, very clear. And now the MAGA people are starting to turn. The rock-rib Republicans, you know, the Nixon, Ike Republicans, they got rid of him a long time ago. And now with his rants, he goes on and says the most ridiculous things. I pity this country. And if this project 2025 ever gets through and Trump is president, you will never recognize this country again. And I feel for all of us, including you, because you have so much love for the United States.
Well, I do, and we have skin in the game, and I want you to thrive as well, John Christopher Boer. Of course, Project 2025 is a contested idea. The Republicans are saying nothing to do with us, Gov. It's a very sort of Christian right conservative agenda, which Trump has rubbished. But look, you're entitled to flag it up, JCB, because you're concerned that's what will happen if Trump is re-elected. John Christopher Boer will catch up soon. Stay awesome. Coming up next in the big story, did the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, do more harm than good in his reaction to the appalling riots in Southport? I'll be joined by a retired senior cop who will be laying down the law about just why we are seeing chaos on Britain's streets. And by the way, how many of those protesters are, in inverted commas, far right? Find out next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, almost 70% of 18 to 25-year-olds, we don't know whether that's men or women, but they say that women shouldn't breastfeed in public. 19% would even go as far as labelling it disgusting.
Well, only a quarter of Brits say that women shouldn't have to cover up when they're breastfeeding. So clearly there is a big debate here and one to get to the bottom of. And to do so, we're joined by parenting journalist Annette Kellu. Really good to see you this morning, Annette.
Really good to see you.
Why is this stigma still existing in our society?
I think we've got a case here going on of double standards. I don't know about you, but I live near a park, OK? One little hint of sun, the men get completely naked. Honestly, you've never seen anything like it. The bodies are out, all different shapes and sizes. So why is it not OK for a woman to feed her baby? You know, we've got this whole thing. They're OK to be naked doing what they want. Why can't a woman just feed her baby? Why is it shameful in 2024? And it's interesting what you say about the 18 to 25-year-olds, because I really want to know, are they men or women? Because I feel like they'd be men.
I was going to say, have you got a hunch? Have you got a suspicion?
Yes, I have. And I think as well, they're thinking of them as sexy time, you know? And I feel like they're not... Well, maybe that's because they're bombarded with images and they see things like that they're seeing it in that context. But it's really not. It's feeding the baby. It's simple. Shouldn't be shameful.
But do you think for men it's like they can't see the difference? There's so much porn in society, isn't there, that the breasts are sexualised and seen as this sexual object and not actually for their main primary purpose, which is actually feeding a child.
Immediate association.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they can't.
And you can't see that they could have two functions.
Absolutely. And to them as well, I feel like they see it, and on the other side of it, they think like, ooh, mummy, and that brings up weird feelings for them, maybe.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, let me tell you a big reaction to my big opinion. If you think Joe Biden is bad, Kamala Harris will destroy in America. She is, of course, his vice president and is now the nominee to run for the Democrats in November. She might even win. May God help us. But the email's coming in thick and faster. Mark, who is a GB News member, has said, good evening, Mark. Kamala will be a disaster for America. Jean, good evening, Jean. How are you? Jean says, Mark. Obama is a smooth talker, but he institutionalized the deep state and weaponized government. When anyone says all of government effort, which is an Obama invention, then run for the hills. Thank you for that, Jean. Diane is also a GB News member. So many GB News members right now. The numbers are quite amazing. She says, Mark, what's the point of Yvette Cooper and Starmer saying that they're giving the police more powers to make arrests during the riots and disorder when we all know that they can't go to prison because they're letting all of the prisoners out of prison as the prisons are overcrowded? The rioters and the thugs know this too. Diane, GB News member, I want you to be our Home Secretary. Listen, let me tell you that I'm genuinely concerned by Keir Starmer's approach to this crisis. Obviously, it's a headache for a new Prime Minister to see civil disobedience, disorder, violence on the streets. We all condemn the riots in no uncertain terms, because let's be clear that a riot is not a protest. If you broke the law, then you lost the argument. I'm crystal clear about that. So it's horrific. And there are elements of the far right that are infiltrating these protests, hijacking them for their own ends. And Starmer's right that they're spreading hate, that they're toxic individuals who are very damaging and bad for the country. But Starmer has taken the path of least resistance by labelling anybody concerned about illegal and legal net migration as far right. And it's got to the point where just literally a matter of days since he made that speech, which I think he'll come to regret, people are now mocking him online. People are going on Twitter saying, I'm far right, you know, I want to have borders, I want to have safe streets, I don't want people running around with machetes. Does that make me far right? So I've got to say that when they laugh at you, politically, you're in trouble. I think this is a major headache for the Prime Minister. But let's speak to a man who knows a lot about how to police the streets. I'm delighted to welcome former top cop and a legend in his own right. We spoke, didn't we, just a couple of weeks ago about his new book and his amazing life story. Greg, what's he called? There you go. Actually, there you go. Let's just roll this back. Can I correct myself? Live telly, folks. Senior lecturer in policing at Staffordshire University, Adam Greenslade. Mr. Greenslade, thank you so much for joining us. What's your appraisal of Sir Keir Starmer's response to these riots?
Well, Mark, the book's not out yet, but give it a couple of weeks and it'll be with you. But thanks for the plug. In terms of the riots, well, unfortunately, he's very, very limited, isn't he, in what terms he can do. Very challenging circumstances that we're seeing here, and it's the first major disruption that we've seen here in the UK for several years at this scale, probably going back to 2011 when we saw disruption across the UK after the outbreak of riots in London following the Mark Duggan shooting.
Yeah, most definitely. It's a difficult situation that the Prime Minister finds himself in. As I've said, there are some thugs, there are some agitators. Can we estimate what sort of percentage of the troublemakers, for example, in Southport would have been from an organised far-right group on Tuesday? Can we ascertain how many were troublemakers and how many were just protesting?
Well, I think that's going to be the work that the police are going to be engaged in as we speak and in the weeks and days that come ahead. Again, if we cast our mind back to 2011 and what we saw there is very similar pattern emerging now, where you see an outbreak of violence in relation to a specific incident, and then we see further, dare I say, copycat incidents across the rest of the UK. Shocking scenes we're seeing now on the screen in front of us. And of course, again, it has to be remembered that the police now are quite challenged in terms of resources and their ability to cope with violence on this scale.
Big time. Does Britain have a problem with two-tier policing, do you think?
I think there's issues, of course. We have to remember we're seeing, following the austerity, we've seen the last government have had a massive increase in police recruitment, the Boris 20,000 uplift to try and increase police numbers. And of course, let's remember that's led to a large amount of police officers being relatively inexperienced, quite young in service, and they'll have certainly never experienced organised violence on this scale in their careers.
Indeed. Well, let me tell you, it's been a privilege to have you on the show, Adam. Is there a book in the works?
It will be now, I think, after this plug. So
consider it commissioned.
Sure.
Listen, I wish we had longer. We'll speak at greater length in the future. But thank you for your wise input on this very complex and troubling subject. My thanks to Senior Lecturer in Policing with Staffordshire University, Adam Greenslade. Interesting conversation. Next up, Eric Trump, The Interview Part 1. An assassination attempt on his father and the role of the Secret Service. That's next.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It turns increasingly unsettled over the next 24 hours or so, particularly across the northwest of the UK. And that's down to an area of low pressure just sat to the northwest, bringing outbreaks of rain, stronger winds. The rain turning increasingly heavy by Monday across western Scotland. The Met Office warning out there could be some local disruption. A fairly quiet end to Saturday and into the early hours of Sunday, though cloud does thicken across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland later, with some patchy outbreaks of rain here, but for most it will be dry. Temperatures are largely staying in double figures, but a bit more comfortable for sleeping compared to recent nights. So Sunday morning, cloudy picture across western Scotland first thing, outbreaks of rain here, but brighter towards the northeast, the Northern Isles as well, seeing plenty of morning sunshine. The cloud extends across parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, with outbreaks of rain. They're largely light in nature. Drier further south and east across the rest of England and Wales, just perhaps one or two light showers, some hazy sunshine in places too. And as we head through the day on Sunday, we'll see further areas of cloud and rain pushing northeastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, perhaps northern England too. Much of the rest of England and Wales largely staying dry, but there will be quite a lot of cloud around, perhaps one or two showers. Best of the sunshine across southern and southeastern areas, temperatures here reaching around 23 or 24. Cooler further north and west you go, 16 or 17. With breezy conditions across western Scotland. On Monday, we can see heavy rain across Northern Ireland, Scotland, some local disruption possible due to that heavy rain through the day, with the Met Office warning out until around 9 p.m. Drier further south and east, temperatures are reaching around 26 or 27, so feeling a little warmer, then cooler and more unsettled later in the week.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At exactly 10 o'clock, I will be dealing with Hugh Edwards and the media elite who circled the wagons to protect him. That's my take at 10. I recommend that you tune in for that one. But part one of our interview with Eric Trump, son of Donald Trump, Ben Leo, flew up to the Trump International Golf Links in Aberdeenshire, where one of the most concerning issues came up, the attempted assassination on his father.
Mr. Trump, thank you so much for having us today at this beautiful course. It's my first time here, and it really is, you know, you've mentioned before how glorious it is, and true to your word, it is fantastic. Tell us about the new course that's being built. How's it going? How does it look?
So obviously, Trump Aberdeen, Trump Scotland, we want to have the best 36 holes on planet Earth, and that's what we already have. The first course, which we built about 10 years ago, it's, tops the charts all over the world, Golf Digest, everyone. It's one of the best courses on planet Earth, and the second course is going to be right there with it. And I keep telling everybody, I promise you, Trump Scotland will be the best 36 holes on Earth. The construction's coming along great. It'll be open next year, middle of next year, and it's you've got to see it. The views, the biggest dunes in Scotland, the biggest coastal dunes in the world. It's spectacular.
Is your father going to come here and grace the opening of the new course?
You better believe he'll be here.
Yeah.
He loves it. He built the whole first course. I'm building the second course. Obviously, he's slightly busy these days, right? With trying to not only win the presidency but save the free world and get us out of the mess that the whole Western world, frankly, is in. But now he's incredibly proud of it. He knows every blade of grass on this piece of property. He loves Scotland. My grandmother's Scottish. We obviously built Turnberry as well, which is, many say the greatest course on earth, and we're incredibly proud of everything we've done in this country.
Well, speaking of your father, of course, we're weeks off the back of that now infamous assassination attempt. How is he? How are you? How's the family?
Yeah, he's doing great. He's tough as nails. We need more tough guys like him. I mean, he's really amazing, and it was a scary moment. I mean, I almost saw your father executed on national TV, and the former president of the United States, and very well likely the future president of the United States, and that's a moment that no one wanted, but he was remarkable. He hopped off that floor, he's bleeding, he fight, and the guy's incredible. I've seen that my entire life, and I think the whole world witnessed it. Certainly over the last 8 years, but they certainly witnessed it in that moment, and that's one of the probably most courageous acts of any political figure in modern history, and I was proud of him. I mean, that should never happen. It's crazy that it was allowed to happen, and I'm proud of him, and I think he's going to go on, and I think in November he's going to win the presidency.
Of course, you always knew he was tough.
Yeah.
But it takes a moment like that.
Yeah.
When you're millimeters from death,
yeah,
to really see what someone's made of, and that now iconic picture with the flag waving behind him, his fist in the air.
Yeah.
You knew he was tough, but did you know he had that in him?
Yeah. I knew he was extremely tough. I think when you're talking bullets versus words, it's it's kind of a different barometer, maybe you want to call it. But he's the toughest guy I know, and I've always said that. And I said that before he entered politics, and I think politics, frankly, only made him tougher and only showed his resilience more. I mean, they attacked him on everything. They tried to impeach him. They tried to take him down. They tried to destroy our family. It's what politics is nasty. And what he's faced is beyond nasty. I think when you see all of a sudden blood running down the side of somebody's face, and he's on the ground because somebody tries to take his life. No, that's a different level of toughness when you pop up and you keep going, right? Fight. And he called me the next day. He called me an hour later, and he goes, "Listen, nothing changes. We're going to the RNC in Milwaukee. Nothing changes. We're not getting there a minute later than anticipated. Nothing changes." And I have tremendous respect for him. Not only was he a great father, not only is he, my closest friend, not only are we inseparable, not only do I run on, our entire family company and our assets around the world, and I have been entrusted to do that, but he's truly just a remarkable, strong guy with incredible perseverance and backbone and dedication to what he believes in, and that's making America great again.
Where were you when you heard of the assassination attempts?
Yeah, I was on my couch with my kids. And they're sitting there, we're watching on live TV, and I looked down at my computer for a second as I was working on something, and I hear the shots, and I'm very familiar with the shooting world. I, did a lot of that stuff competitively for a long time, and I instantly knew what it was, and I go, that's not good, and, obviously the rest is history.
How did you feel?
Oh, horrible. I mean, aside from the fact that we knew he was bleeding from the side of the face because you could see it, when you're wearing a dark suit, you can't see if somebody took a round in the torso. I mean, you would never be able to tell, right? Yeah. Everything's dark, and then also there's a bunch of people around him, so we didn't know if he got hit in the stomach, we didn't know if he got hit in the chest, we didn't know where it went in the head, and that's a horrible feeling. It changes their perspective, it changes what they think is important, what they don't think is important. People still are fragile, all right? People's lives can be expunged like that, and you're not invincible, and I think that certainly weighs on him, and it certainly weighs on all of us, and yeah, I think there probably was a different aura after that shooting. At the same time, he's more, kind of shows everything that's wrong with the system, if you want to know the truth, right? The constant attacks, the relentless attacks, the problems that we have in the United States, problems the Western world has. You have the same problems over here. And he's damn committed to fighting those problems, to solving those problems, and to making sure that the West stands on its own and the United States, remains a superpower of the globe.
Were you emotional? I mean, did you cry during the news? I mean,
yeah.
Did he cry, your father?
I've never seen him cry in my life. I've never seen him cry in my life. I mean, obviously, I was. It's a punch to the stomach. There's no question about that, right? You're sitting there with your infant children on your lap, and they watch the near assassination of their grandfather. I watched the near assassination of my father. The country watches the near assassination of a person that they absolutely love, right? I mean, he got the most votes of any Republican candidate in the history of our nation. And these are people who would walk to the end of earth for the man. I mean, they love him, they adore him,
So, I mean, let's talk about the Secret Service. Do you think they willfully let your father be shot that day? Because there was a piece in the New York Times saying that one of the counter-snipers was communicating by text with the local police, who said that they knew of this guy at least 100 minutes before the first shot was fired.
Secret Service was with me for 5 years. They're incredible people. I know many of them personally. I've been to their weddings. I know their kids. I know their wives. I know, one of the females on the stage in that famous picture, she was with me for 3 years. She's incredible. She would have died for him in that moment, hands down, no doubt about it. She would do anything for me. There's no question she would have died for my father. Somebody really let that team down. That team showed up a couple minutes before the rally, went up on stage. Somebody really, really let them down, and they better damn get to the bottom of it. I'm mad. I think a lot of America's mad. Thank God for the people on that stage. But there's no question that somebody in the periphery made a big mistake and it almost led to the unthinkable.
Who do you think at this point? I mean, are you happy to give any thoughts or ideas? What does your father think about it?
I don't know. All I know is, again, I told you I did a lot of competitive shooting. You allowed somebody on a rooftop at 130 yards with a modern day rifle. That's like me making, I know we're standing on a putting green right here, but that's like me making a 4-inch putt, right? Yeah. This is not a hard shot. You can do it 1,000 out of 1,000 times if you're even remotely competent with the rifle. And again, it almost cost America their former president. It almost cost me a father. It almost cost my kids their grandfather. It can't be allowed to happen. Could you imagine a president being here and not having the fortitude to guard that roof?
Just
of course you would. I mean, a Boy Scout would have figured this out. All right, this doesn't take professionals to figure out. A small child would have figured this out. That hey, you may as well have somebody up on that roof, and they didn't. And we almost lost a great person because of it.
Just final question on that. Do you think it's incompetence or something maybe a bit more sinister?
Well, it's certainly gross negligence. I mean, it's absolute incompetence and negligence on behalf of somebody. And I'm not talking about the agents on this stage. And I love those guys. Right? They acted immediately and they did the right thing. Do I think it was incompetence to allow a guy to linger around for an hour with a high-power rifle 100 yards away from a rally? By the way, if my father wasn't on that stage, it would have been incompetence. I mean, you have 20,000 people, and the guy's walking around with a rifle. Yeah, that's incompetence. Yes, it's gross negligence, and they're going to get to the bottom of it. But I hope it's not something worse. I mean, I truly.
Donald Trump's son Eric in the company of Ben Leo. Part 2 of the interview just after 10:30, following the papers, in which he'll be talking about Sir Keir Starmer, David Lammy, also Nigel Farage, his friend, and Harry and Meghan. But next up, my Mark Meets guest is one of the biggest music stars of the 60s and someone whose career he owes to the Beatles. See you in 2.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Tom, dying to talk to you about this. Transport for London, right? They run the buses and tubes and things in London. And they've got £2.5 million. £2.5 million, which they're going to spend on what?
Diversity training. I dare say they've probably got plenty of it already.
But let me tell you something. I sit on a board of a company and I was diversity trained recently.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, really?
And I must admit,
What was that like?
Well, I tell you, it was like stating the bleeding obvious.
Yeah.
Right? So you sit there and you say, well, why would I do that? Or why would I treat someone like that? I wouldn't do that in the first place. I don't need to be trained in this. And you just sat there for 6 hours while people told you the obvious. But what do you think of spending that amount of money for Transport for London?
It's crazy because, on the one hand, do we need this diversity training? The TfL is an incredibly diverse workforce already. The idea that there are barriers to entry there doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Also, as you say, these things are commonsensical, really. And to the point, sometimes they can become problematic because they're not just saying, you know, be open and tolerant of people and so on. It's actually preaching a more kind of divisive sort of rhetoric to people, which can be a big problem in the
you get your
workplace.
diversity training from your boss or somebody, don't you? Somebody pulls you up and says, you don't talk to people like that. This is how you talk to them. That's it. Done.
It should be that
spend
simple.
6 hours in front of
And I know that in the grand scheme of things, £2.5 million is kind of money down the back of the sofa. But at the same time, my local tube station just closes early on random nights of the week because of the fact that they haven't got enough staff.
4 years ago, there were 655 people at City Hall earning over £100,000 a year. People might argue that's 655 too many. There are 1,100 now. 4 years later.
1,100.
Actually, 1,142 to be precise.
The People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
In just 15 minutes' time, in my Take at 10, the Hugh Edwards scandal shines a light on establishment media and the efforts of some of the most high-profile broadcasters in the country to defend the now disgraced BBC star. So we'll get to all of that. That is my Take at 10. But first, Mark Meets. Very excited about this one. One of the biggest recording artists of the 1960s, part of the so-called British invasion of the USA. Billy J. Kramer, famous for so many hits, including Little Children and, of course, Do You Want to Know a Secret? In fact, he topped the charts with several Lennon-McCartney compositions, most notably Bad to Me. In fact, he enjoys the accolade of being the first singer in the world to have a #1 hit with the Beatles song, apart from the Fab Four themselves. Well, there's a new album out, and the first single on it to be released is I Couldn't Have Done It Without You. Take a listen.
I was proud to be a part of some very special times. Famous lads from Liverpool, we're all friends of mine. Are you with me? Just like the good old days.
Say that Billy J. Kramer, icon of the 60s, but still very much in the music business, joins me now. Billy, thank you so much for coming into the studio. Congratulations on the release of the album and the single. Looks like that video is fun. You went back to your hometown.
Yes, I went back to... what happened was I came into London and we had my birthday party at Abbey Road.
Yeah.
It was the 60th anniversary of me appearing on Ed Sullivan show. And then I recorded a whole new album there. And then I went to Liverpool and we did this video.
So tell me about going back to Liverpool. I think you grew up in Bootle, is that right?
I grew up in Bootle.
A suburb of Liverpool. So what about the emotions of returning to those streets that you know so well?
It was a lot of fun. I'll be honest with you. There was no script. And it was one of them days where everything worked. I just strolled through the streets with a guy with a camera, and what you see is what we did.
And did you still know your way around?
Well, it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
It's changed a lot, but I know it, yes.
Yeah, you bump into any ex-girlfriends?
No.
You've got to be careful when you go back to your hometown, you know. So that's brilliant. And then, talking about returning to your past, you recorded this album and that lovely song that we just heard at Abbey Road. I mean, it's got to be the most famous, or one of the most famous music studios in the world. Therefore, tell me about that. Now, why did you go back? What was the reason for that? Because, of course, these days you can record anywhere. So why did you go home?
Because it was to mark, 60 years in show business.
Yeah.
And it was just a wonderful experience.
And that place hasn't changed much, has it? Because I watched a documentary about it recently, and they've kept its atmosphere, haven't they?
It's very, very like it was. It was amazing to go into that room where John Lennon, all them years ago, sat at the piano and played Bad to Me to me.
It's amazing.
He played Bad to Me. I'll never forget the day. And he said, I want to play a song and give me your honest opinion. And he played I Want to Hold Your Hand. And I said, can I have that one? He said, no, we're doing that one ourselves. But I was very happy because I recorded Bad to Me that day, and the B-side was the song that they didn't record for a year and a half later, I Call Your Name.
God, unbelievable. Another incredible tune. Well, you did great justice to some of their compositions, and you had hits, of course, in the United States, here and around the world. Ed Sullivan, that was the biggest show on TV, the equivalent of the David Letterman show or the Johnny Carson show. It was the show to be on, millions of viewers, and it changed your life.
Yes, it is. I mean, to walk on, it's a bit scary to walk on and know that there's 70-odd million people looking at
Imagine.
But it was fun. A lot of things were happening then. It was a very exciting time for me.
And how did you handle fame, Billy?
Not very well in the beginning, quite frankly.
How so?
I was a very shy person. I was a very quiet kid, very shy. And suddenly, I recorded Do You Want to Know a Secret? It became a #1 hit for me.
Yeah.
And suddenly, from being this overweight, chubby kid who was self-conscious, there was thousands of kids around the house and screaming and tearing your clothes and all that kind of thing. It was a bit overwhelming.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
Some people want that side of it, but you weren't fussed about that.
No, I'll be honest with you. I was like, why are you going crazy? No one was going crazy 3 months ago when I was working on the railroad.
Well, of course, you were able to give up the day job and become a full-time musician.
Yes.
Thanks to Brian Epstein, the manager of the Beatles.
Well, Brian, what happened was there was a Merseybeat popularity poll in a newspaper called Merseybeat.
Yeah.
And it was for the top 20. There was about 400 bands in Liverpool then. And I came joint second.
That's amazing.
To the Beatles. The Beatles won it. I came second.
I'll take that.
I'd been doing shows with the Beatles before they made records. I was opening for them.
Yeah.
So Brian had seen me then, and then we had a presentation night for, at a place called the Majestic Ballroom in Birkenhead. And I got up and sang some songs, and shortly afterwards, Brian approached me and said he'd like to manage me.
That's incredible, and the rest is history. You were and are a special talent. Could you see that the Beatles were special before they made it?
I first saw the Beatles when they appeared at Litherland Town Hall, and I knew there was something magic about them, and they were going to take the world apart.
And how did you get on with John? Because I know John helped you and sort of advised you on various things.
Well, John was great because just before I released Do You Want to Know a Secret, I had a stage name of just Billy Kramer. And I went to Brian Epstein's office one day, and Brian said, John has a suggestion. I said, what is it? He said, call yourself Billy J. It'll catch on with the public better, and it's more rock and roll.
And that worked, didn't it?
And it worked, and I thought, that's great, I'll take it.
Have you spoken to McCartney recently? Are you in touch still?
I spoke to him it's a couple of years, quite frankly, because he's a busy man, I'm a busy man.
Yeah. You'll always have that history, won't you?
We had that history. We had a long chat, and we sang Do You Want to Know a Secret together.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
Well, listen, I'm so thrilled to have met you, and congratulations on the new album. Let me give the details. The single is called I Couldn't Have Done It Without You, and the album is Are You With Me? So do yourself a favour, download it, buy it, get the CD. And I do hope, Billy, that our paths cross again. A real treat to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, I'll be dealing with Hugh Edwards and the media elite who circled the wagons to protect him. That is my take at 10. See you in 2.
That warm feeling inside from boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It turns increasingly unsettled over the next 24 hours or so, particularly across the northwest of the UK. And that's down to an area of low pressure just sat to the northwest, bringing outbreaks of rain, stronger winds. The rain turning increasingly heavy by Monday across western Scotland. The Met Office warning out there could be some local disruption. A fairly quiet end to Saturday and into the early hours of Sunday, though cloud does thicken across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland later, with some patchy outbreaks of rain here, but for most it will be dry. Temperatures are largely staying in double figures, but a bit more comfortable for sleeping compared to recent nights. So Sunday morning, cloudy picture across western Scotland first thing, outbreaks of rain here, but brighter towards the northeast, the Northern Isles as well, seeing plenty of morning sunshine. The cloud extends across parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, with outbreaks of rain, though largely light in nature. Drier further south and east across the rest of England and Wales, just perhaps one or two light showers, some hazy sunshine in places too. And as we head through the day on Sunday, we'll see further areas of cloud and rain pushing northeastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, perhaps northern England too. Much of the rest of England and Wales largely staying dry, but there will be quite a lot of cloud around, perhaps one or two showers. Best of the sunshine across southern and southeastern areas, temperatures here reaching around 23 or 24. Cooler further north and west you go, 16 or 17. With breezy conditions across western Scotland. On Monday, we can see heavy rain across Northern Ireland, Scotland, some local disruption possible due to that heavy rain through the day, with the Met Office warning out until around 9 p.m. Drier further south and east, temperatures are reaching around 26 or 27, so feeling a little warmer, then cooler and more unsettled later in the week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway, an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. David from Kent was our last big winner. Listen to what he had to say about getting that winning call.
Hi, I'm David from Kent and I won £15,000 and it couldn't have come at a better time. I was gobsmacked. What have you got to lose for what it costs? In fact, I've done it again this week, so I'd recommend it to anybody.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. It is 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online. In the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight.
A president who would line up with neo-Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan.
Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into the economy. And then you have jokers come out and say things like that, right? I can't possibly take that seriously.
Yes, part two of our interview with Eric Trump, Donald Trump's son. He addresses the issues around Keir Starmer, tension in that relationship. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, no love lost there. Speaking of which, we hear about his father's views on Harry and Meghan. Also tonight, the Hugh Edwards scandal shines a light on establishment media and the efforts of some of the country's highest profile broadcasters to defend the now disgraced BBC star. Well, along with The Sun, we called it out on this programme a year ago. And I'll be giving my final verdict on a story which has shocked a nation and rocked our national state broadcaster. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages, a packed show, lots to get through. I'll be dealing with Hugh Edwards and his BBC mates straight after the news headlines and a very good friend of mine, Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much. And good evening. The top stories. Merseyside Police has condemned the violence and disorder that happened in Liverpool city centre today. Officers remain in the area to monitor the ongoing situation. 750 protesters and another 750 counter-protesters clashed and objects were thrown at police officers and their vehicles. Merseyside Police earlier said a number of officers were injured during the serious disorder. Bricks and bottles were also thrown towards them. A police car was destroyed in Bristol during the protest there, where there were also multiple arrests made for violent disorder, where hundreds of protesters gathered for two opposing demonstrations. And fireworks were thrown amid tense exchanges between an anti-Islamic group and an anti-racism rally in Belfast. Police in Northern Ireland say a business has been set on fire as disorder continues in the city. Police chiefs have said tonight more disorder is likely in the coming days. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has warned people taking part in disorder across England that those breaking the law will pay the price. The Prime Minister has also said the police have his full support to take action against extremists attempting to sow hate, as he held emergency talks with ministers over the unrest across the country. Videos posted on social media last night showed a former police office ablaze in Sunderland, while a mosque was also targeted. Vehicles were overturned and set on fire. 5 police officers were injured, with 4 hospitalised and 10 people arrested for offences including violent disorder and burglary. Yvette Cooper says police have the government's full backing to take the action they need.
Well, criminal violence and disorder has no place on Britain's streets. We've been clear to the police that they have our full backing in taking the strongest possible action against perpetrators, including we're making sure that there are more prosecutors, there are sufficient prison places, and also that the courts stand ready, because anyone who engages in this kind of disorder needs to be clear that they will pay the price.
And GB News' Ben Leo travelled to Aberdeenshire to speak with Eric Trump today, the former US President Donald Trump's son. And here's what he had to say about the Vice President, Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it's funny, the media was mocking her. They spent the last 4 years mocking her, and then all of a sudden, you know, Biden's forced out, and all of a sudden she walks on water. It's really an amazing thing. But generally speaking, in our country, you know, people don't trust the media anymore. They don't. For the last 3.5 years, they were talking about how Biden was a vibrant, articulate, well-spoken, healthy man. He walks out on stage at a debate, and everybody realizes that that's just not true. They knew it wasn't true, but he walks on a stage and it just reinforces the fact that it wasn't true. They realized two things: that Kamala Harris was lying to them, and that the media was lying to them.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. Now it is back to Mark Dolan.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. See you in an hour. Welcome to a busy Mark Dolan tonight. Part 2 of our interview with Eric Trump, Donald Trump's son. He talks about the president's relationship with Keir Starmer, David Lammy, and Harry and Meghan. Also tonight, tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And let me tell you a special surprise before the end of the hour. A lady that had a heart attack, after which she started speaking with a Swedish accent. She's never been to Sweden. She tells her extraordinary and moving story. So a packed hour, the papers, Donald Trump's son, Kinsey Schofield, by the way, talking about US news. But first, my take at 10. There's trouble in paradise, folks. Another major star brings the BBC into disrepute following horrific revelations in the past about Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris and Stuart Hall. It's now time for the BBC's face of news, Hugh Edwards, to turn out to be a wrong-un. Quite rightly, given that they are remunerated via a public tax, BBC talent have to reveal their salary, but perhaps it might cut out the middleman if they also have to regularly hand over the contents of their phone and give auditors access to the hard drives of their computers as well. The Hugh Edwards story is deeply chilling, and primary focus should be with the victims featured in the vile footage and imagery of which Edwards was in possession. A sick, depraved and wicked crime. The only silver lining to this very dark cloud is the squirming and discomfort of Edwards' high-profile mates in the media, who circled the wagons to defend him a year ago, when the brave and bold Sun newspaper and myself on this channel were actually doing our jobs. You know, journalism. I devoted 6 separate monologues to this story, no less, and I got dog's abuse for doing it. But other so-called journalists like John Sopel and Emily Maitlis, stars of a podcast called The News Agents, which is basically a retirement home for ex-BBC lefties, well, they were absolutely furious about journalists being journalists. Here is Sopel doing the rounds in a set of interviews that will likely make for uncomfortable viewing this evening.
We now know there was no illegality. So what are you left with? Someone's private life has come under scrutiny, who is now unwell. I think it would be a crying shame if this is the last we see of Hugh Edwards on television, when the allegations have turned out to be not that much.
Not that much, wow. Maitlis and Sopel were raging at the Sun newspaper for reporting things about a powerful multimillionaire broadcaster. Something tells me that if it was a GB News presenter facing similar allegations, they would be asking the Sun to do their worst. But there was particular embarrassment for a journalist that you may not have heard of, but who had a big job in the past. David Yelland, the former editor of the Sun newspaper, who not only objected to his former employer's pursuit of the Edwards story, for which they've been entirely vindicated, but he seemed to indulge in a strange Hugh Edwards love-in at the time. These tweets are from July of last year. First of all, he tweeted, "Well done, Hugh Edwards, for all the work, all the service, all the years. These grim days will pass." How lovely. What about this one? Also in July, "Today is not the end for Hugh. It is the beginning," and the tweet finishes with love hearts. How romantic. But this one is my favourite. "I wish Hugh Edwards well. The Sun inflicted terror on Hugh, despite no evidence of any criminal offence. This is no longer," he says, "a BBC crisis. it is a crisis for the paper. Not really. The fearless Sun editor Victoria Newton has been doing the rounds on the radio this week, and rightly so. She has been very bold and very brave. Yellen's argument was that there was no evidence of criminality at the time. Well, of course, he's right. But the vulnerable youngster at the heart of the story has slammed the Star today, telling the Mirror newspaper he felt groomed by Edwards. So, Yellen's staunch support for Edwards has aged more badly than Joe Biden. He finishes with this zinger, again from July. At the end of his tweet, he says, social media also needs speedy reform. So in Mateless and Sopal, you've got journalists who are uncomfortable about journalism, and you've got a former national newspaper editor who seems unhappy with the free, unregulated and democratic nature of social media. Well, the man has form on this. After all, he participated in a highly unbalanced Newsnight discussion about this very channel, GB News, in which it was argued without challenge at all that GB News should be shut down. Yellen, for his part, described GB News as dangerous. I guess dangerous like the Sun newspaper, asking important questions about well-paid stars who, it turns out, consumed material that involved the worst category of abuse of children. If that's dangerous, then I'll be dangerous. Better safe than sorry. It must be painful for these figures in the smug, pampered media elite to see one of their own fall like this. And how they must regret inhabiting an echo chamber which saw them object to the idea of a famous, rich, powerful man on the public payroll being accountable in the face of very serious allegations, which, by the way, were never denied. Still, there is one plus side, given that they're clearly so fond of the guy. They will have every opportunity to visit him in prison. Now, let me tell you that David Yellen has responded to these historic tweets. Just this week, he has sent this message to the world via X. He said, I criticised my old paper's investigation into Hugh Edwards, but editor Victoria Newton is vindicated by the fact that he has pleaded guilty to, albeit totally unconnected, charges. There were issues with her attack, but the Sun has had a mighty victory, one which makes children safer. Well, there you go. Mr. Yellen has been on quite the journey. I'm delighted now to introduce two titans of UK media, former BBC executive and presenter Roger Bolton, and John Mayer, former producer and author of 5 books about the future of the BBC, including his latest, which is out now, How Do We Pay for the BBC After 2027? John, I would wonder whether some of my viewers and listeners will be reluctant to pay that licence fee given the behaviour of one of its biggest stars.
Maybe. I mean, the BBC is damaged by this. They put the mental health of a presenter in front of the reputation of the BBC. The reputation is lost, I'm afraid, on this one. I've never met Hugh Edwards. I haven't circled any wagons around him. I don't intend to. I think the BBC's handled this incredibly badly. I will declare an interest. Roger was my boss 45 years ago. So, you know, we may disagree, but we're all once colleagues. So, yeah, the BBC has acted stupidly. Look, the answer is very simple. Once the cops told him he'd been arrested, they should have got Hugh Edwards and his lawyer together and said, look, we've had this information, what's your answer to that? And he would say yes or no or no comment. And what you should then do is create a suspense account and put all of his salary into that suspense account until the case came to court. And if he was guilty, he lost the money. If he was innocent, he got the money. But he didn't do that. They kept it secret. They kept on paying him extra money. That was pretty stupid. Now, my trouble is that Tim Davie doesn't have a flat catcher. Most big bosses have a flat catcher. Margaret Thatcher had Willie Whitelaw. You know, Mark Thompson had Mark Byford. As far as I can see, Tim Davie has nobody. It's a solo act. He doesn't have a journalist who can read the room and say, no, you don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And as a result, I think Tim will suffer as a result of this.
Roger Bolton, a delight to have you on the show. Thank you for your time. Do the BBC have a case to answer for their handling of the Hugh Edwards scandal?
Well, they have a case to answer, but you have a case to answer for the way in which you introduced this item. You didn't make a distinction between two separate events. One, the latter, is the revelation that Hugh Edwards was looking at child pornography of the most disgusting and disgraceful sort. We didn't know that. The BBC didn't know that. So that's a separate instance. There is the incident earlier about with involved in The Sun. As you know, the BBC suspended Hugh Edwards, who then had a mental breakdown, who then went into hospital. And the problem we all have with this, if you're in the BBC, is when somebody is arrested, they may not be charged. What do? You have to work on the principle they're innocent until proven guilty. On the second question about why didn't he summon, or why the Director General didn't summon Hugh Edwards into the office and say, look, is it true or not? My understanding is that Hugh Edwards was uncontactable because of his mental state and because he was neglected. So the BBC is in this great difficulty. Does it say, because someone is charged, right, off you go? Or do they say, actually, there's somebody here who's been charged, may be guilty, may not be, is in a very difficult medical state. What do we do? As it happened, and as you know, the BBC suspended him, and then they curtailed his contract, and he was the rest of his contract for 2 years wasn't paid. Now, is the BBC culpable? What I think it probably is culpable about is not early enough laying out all that happened. But remember, when it was told by the police in confidence that Hugh Edwards had been arrested, not charged, it was told in confidence, and the police asked the BBC not to say anything. The other thing we might finally say about this, I think, is that if you watch BBC News over the past few days, their journalists have been just as tough as any other. The stories run at the top. I can't think of another organisation in the world that would investigate their own bosses in the way BBC News has done. And also, the other final thing to say is there are a number of people who want to get rid of the BBC, who seize on issues like that, to try and claim that the BBC as a whole, in some way, is full of people who are awful or whatever, etc., 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 which is absolutely ridiculous. It's full of good people, it's some bad people, it's flawed, but it does try and tell the truth and represents a range of viewpoints, which on the whole, your channel does not.
Well, first of all, we can come to that in a moment, Roger, but I suspect the BBC may not have a case to answer in regards to its handling of the Hugh Edwards scandal because they were in a contractual bind. And, of course, as you said, he had health issues, mental health issues, which made it more difficult for them to proceed. However, the central point of my opening Take a 10 monologue is that high-profile friends of Hugh Edwards circled the wagons to protect him and condemned The Sun for pursuing the story. Do you agree with them that The Sun were wrong in exposing these allegations around Hugh Edwards, the face of BBC News and somebody on the public payroll?
Well, I'm not a friend of Hugh Edwards. I have not met him directly, so I'm not one of those. I think the problem with The Sun's initial story was, first of all, that they didn't specify the charges. So there was this general suggestion he'd been involved in something, but it wasn't specified. It didn't go to him to get an answer. The person involved, the young man involved, said that at that stage anyway, that there was no case to answer. The police then said there was no criminality involved. Friends, understandably, perhaps want to defend friends, but nobody, I'm sure the friends, not his wife, not his daughters, not his children rather, knew about what he was doing, in the room by himself with computer on social media. So to blame friends for not knowing something is difficult. And maybe they're naive, but it's not dishonorable to stand up for a friend. Now they have to acknowledge that what he was involved in was disgusting, and indeed he deserves to go to prison. Whether he's in a mental state to do so is another matter.
Well, indeed. Well, I went after the story hard with 6 separate monologues. I was encouraged by the fortitude of The Sun in pursuing the story. The reason being that, A, he's the face of BBC News, he's on the public payroll, he's a rich and powerful man. Plus, those allegations against him a year ago were never denied.
Yes, I mean, I hate to disagree with Roger, but I think the BBC obviously had an internal report on that £35,000 case, and I think they should publish that. They should have published it at the time, because if they found no evidence, they should have said, look, we found no evidence. The cops found no evidence, so it didn't go to any criminal charge. So that should be published. Any other internal reports on Hugh Edwards should be published. It's simple as that. Be transparent. Don't hide these things, because that's not what the BBC should be for, management or journalism.
OK, briefly, Roger?
Well, just separate these two things. The first instance is that some story is disconnected from the other revelation. The investigation on the first one led to Hugh Edwards' suspension and then leaving the BBC with no payoff and no thanks. That should be borne in mind.
OK. Listen, thank you to both of you for your time. First of all, we have the former BBC producer John Mayer, whose new book is out now, How Do We Pay for the BBC After 2027? And also the former BBC executive and presenter Roger Bolton. Roger, I do hope that you will return to the show, if no other reason than to help us achieve editorial balance, because let me tell you, Mark Dolan tonight is the home of diverse opinion, and I welcome all of your thoughts this evening. OK, folks, lots more to get through. Next up, Harry and Meghan's first TV interview since the Oprah interview. We'll get reaction from Kinsey Schofield next.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness, and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life, and he's there to do it. I mean, we mustn't forget that in, I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like, and he also helped people who are selling the magazine.
Big Issue, no?
Yes, the Big Issue. And he's worked all day long with the same man twice now. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
Where does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's, you know. And there will be a lot more. And he's been getting the money to do this. And I think it's he wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for US News with the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. And Kinsey, good to see you. Harry and Meghan's first major TV interview since the Oprah interview. What happened?
I'm sorry, I have to hijack your show for 3 seconds, Mark. Do you mind if I respond to John Christopher Bua about what he said about Eric Trump?
Most definitely. Now,
okay?
he's of course, he's a Democrat supporter. He's a big old lovable lefty, and he doesn't like Donald Trump or Eric Trump. So what's your reaction?
I just have to say, what a pathetic little dried up prune of a man. I don't know what gutter you found him in, but he sits on Twitter and kisses the Clinton family's butts like they are the arbiters of political morality. And I know I don't have to remind you of what Jeffrey Epstein's friend, Bill Clinton, did in our White House with an intern and a cigar. I don't know what delusional land Bua lives in or what he's smoking, but I bet Hunter Biden is familiar with it.
Like I said, this show is nothing if it's not balanced. Let's take a listen, actually, to what Eric Trump had to say about Harry and Meghan. Take a listen.
What I can tell you is my father had so much respect for the Queen, as did I. My mom knew so many of them for years. I think you probably know that. Had a great relationship with Diana and everyone else. And, you know, that's a very sacred kind of institution. And you can happily have those two back. We'll happily send them back from America. You can have them back over here, but I'm not sure if you guys want them any more than we might not want them anymore. They feel like they're on a little bit of an island of their own. But listen, you can always have bad actors in anything. You can always have, you know, spoiled apples in every orchard. But the institution of the royal family is beautiful, and it's something that's really actually admired by a lot of Americans, and I think that should be protected. And
what's your reaction to what Donald Trump, his son, just had to say there?
Look, we saw Prince Harry criticize Donald Trump when he took a call from a prankster thinking it was Greta Thunberg, saying that Donald Trump had blood on his hands. That was years ago. We saw Meghan Markle describe Donald Trump as divisive during an interview with Comedy Central. We saw them skip a meeting with Donald Trump not once but twice when he was there in the UK to visit the Queen. I think that Trump is a lover of tradition. We know that he has a history with the family, but Harry and Meghan have also been very verbal about their disdain for Trump. During the Times 100 ABC special, encouraging people to vote for change, encouraging people really to vote for Biden because Trump was in the White House. That's change. So I think that Eric was very PC there. He was very politically correct. There was a kindness in his tone and in his explanation. But at the end of the day, I don't know what Harry and Meghan thought trying to go head to head with Donald Trump, who is a much more intelligent individual than both of them are.
Harsh words, but many would agree. What about the couple, the Sussexes, appearing in their first major television interview since the Oprah interview? How did it go?
Look, they're campaigning to have a voice when it comes to the online conversation, online bullying, and how children should navigate social media. I don't know what qualifies Prince Harry to be a mental health expert or a first responder, as he says in this interview. He specifically told Oprah Winfrey that despite being a patron of multiple mental health charities, he felt powerless and was at a loss when his wife approached him and told him that she was having mental health issues. I don't know what has happened since March 2021, but I can tell you that it's not a master's degree in counseling, psychology, or social work. If Harry and Meghan want to stop bullying online, they should start with their fan base, who spent a significant amount of the year bullying the Princess of Wales about her illness.
Absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. Listen, before you go, John Christopher Bua has direct messaged me. He wants your number. Can I share it?
Absolutely not. I'd rather die in a fire.
Oh, my goodness. Kinsey, we'll see you in a week's time. Please don't do that. My thanks to the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Next up, tomorrow's papers. And in part 2 of our interview with Eric Trump, Donald Trump's son, we'll be hearing about his father's views on Sir Keir Starmer, David Lammy, Nigel Farage and Harry and Meghan. So that's Donald Trump's son, Eric, next, and the papers. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It turns increasingly unsettled over the next 24 hours or so, particularly across the northwest of the UK. And that's down to an area of low pressure just sat to the northwest, bringing outbreaks of rain, stronger winds. The rain turning increasingly heavy by Monday across western Scotland. A Met Office warning out there could be some local disruption. A fairly quiet end to Saturday and into the early hours of Sunday, though cloud does thicken across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland later, with some patchy outbreaks of rain here, but for most it will be dry. Temperatures are largely staying in double figures, but a bit more comfortable for sleeping compared to recent nights. So Sunday morning, cloudy picture across western Scotland first thing, outbreaks of rain here, but brighter towards the northeast, the Northern Isles as well, seeing plenty of morning sunshine. The cloud extends across parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, with outbreaks of rain. They're largely light in nature. Drier further south and east across the rest of England and Wales, just perhaps 1 or 2 light showers, some hazy sunshine in places too. And as we head through the day on Sunday, we'll see further areas of cloud and rain pushing northeastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, perhaps northern England too. Much of the rest of England and Wales largely staying dry, but there will be quite a lot of cloud around, perhaps 1 or 2 showers. Best of the sunshine across southern and southeastern areas, temperatures here reaching around 23 or 24. Cooler further north and west you go, 16 or 17. With breezy conditions across western Scotland. On Monday, we can see heavy rain across Northern Ireland, Scotland, some local disruption possible due to that heavy rain through the day, with the Met Office warning out until around 9 p.m. Drier further south and east, temperatures are reaching around 26 or 27, so feeling a little warmer, then cooler and more unsettled later in the week.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, in just a few minutes' time, very excited about this, I'll be speaking to a lady who had a health episode and suddenly had a Swedish accent. She's never been to Sweden. It's an extraordinary and very moving story. It's real. It's not a wind-up. She's with me at 10:45. But first, tomorrow's papers. We start with the Sunday Telegraph. I am a woman, says gender row boxer. And also 24-hour courts to tackle rioters. Courts will sit for 24 hours to fast-track sentencing under government plans to crack down on far-right riots that swept Britain today. Ministers were tonight in talks with senior members of the judiciary about bringing in emergency measures after clashes in major cities that left police injured. Well, of course, the Prime Minister certainly well qualified to handle a law and order crisis as the former Director of Public Prosecutions and a top lawyer, as he mentioned more than once or twice during the election campaign. What I don't know is what his father did for a living. Labour war on landlords will make it harder to evict tenants. Labour is plotting a renewed crackdown on landlords with plans for stricter rules on evictions and requirements for costly eco-refurbishment. Letby Hospital suffered outbreak of bacteria that can kill babies. The neonatal unit where Lucy Letby worked suffered an outbreak of bacteria lethal to babies, according to a leaked report. In August last year, Letby was convicted of the murders of 7 newborns and the attempted murders of 6 other infants. A retrial in July also found her guilty of the attempted murder of another child. Let me tell you that the Telegraph had done some interesting work on Lucy Letby, and there are a couple of journalists there that think she may be the victim of the biggest miscarriage of justice in history. No evidence for that that I've got access to, but I think, Greg, we might pursue that story and speak to the journalist that thinks that there's more to that than meets the eye. The Observer now, rioters will pay the price as wave of violence sweeps UK. Sunday Mirror, TV star's grooming victim. BBC chief should quit over Hugh Edwards. Sunday Express, secret agents hunting down far-right rioters. And Daily Star Sunday. How about this? Britain's are at their brainiest on the bog. Well, I'm always saying that to Mrs. Dolan. Can I say I'm a genius on the loo? Life-changing decisions on the toilet, says the paper. More creative than in the office. It says, Eureka! Brilliant stuff. Thank you to the Daily Star for some much-needed levity. It's time now for part two of our interview with Eric Trump. He, of course, is Donald Trump's son. The brilliant Ben Leo flew to Scotland to one of the Trump golf courses, the International Golf Links in Aberdeenshire, to ask him about his thoughts on our new Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, Nigel Farage, and Harry and Meghan. Enjoy.
Did you hear from our new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, or did your father hear from him in the days after that event?
You know what? I haven't asked him. It's a great question. I'll report back. I've been over here building golf courses.
You've been too busy, of course.
I never asked a question, but my father has tremendous respect for this country. He loves the UK in general. He loves Scotland. We've done so much here, and there have been times where he's been treated horribly, and there's been times that he's been treated so incredibly well. And he's put his heart and soul into this nation, and I can tell you, from a kind of presidential standpoint, you will not have a person who will be a greater ally to the UK than my father.
The reason I ask about Sir Keir Starmer is particularly his new cabinet. I'm not sure if you've seen or your father's seen, but around a dozen members of his new cabinet in recent years have made some pretty disparaging remarks about your dad.
Yeah, welcome to politics, right? Welcome to politics.
Not least our Foreign Secretary, David Lammy. He said he was a neo-Nazi sympathising racist, sociopath and so on. Has your father spoken to David Lammy? Has your team spoken to him at all? And how do you think he'll manage that going forward, knowing the things that
Truthfully,
he said? Yeah.
I don't think my father gives a damn. I don't think he cares one bit. My father's in it to win the presidency of the United States. He's in it to restore America to the greatness it deserves. I'm over here building the greatest golf course on earth. I do wish that the UK would once in a while say thank you. There's a lot of people who stay away from the UK because it's hard to do business in. And when I say hard to do business in, like punitively hard to do business in compared to other areas of the world. We've built some of the greatest assets in the world. We saved Turnberry, which you know better than anybody. It kind of fallen into disrepair. We saved it. We put hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into the economy. And then you have jokers who come out and say things like that, right? I can't possibly take that seriously. But I can tell you he's not losing sleep over any comment. And politics is nasty. And you have nasty people in politics. So I take it all with a grain of salt. I truly do.
Yeah, I'm sure you and your family and your father definitely have thick skin. I guess the concern is from the British side, people who admire your father and obviously, of course, love our own country. If and when your father does win a second term at the White House, we want that relationship to be strong and solid. And we're concerned not about your father, but more about people like David Lammy and Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, who have made all these awful comments in the past.
I think irrespective of what a bunch of politicians say, which they think will benefit them for about 3 seconds and get them headlines. And the fact, listen, you're talking about this guy because he made some outlandish comment. Had he not made that outlandish comment, you wouldn't be talking about it, right? By default, he's winning because we're even talking about him, right? My father doesn't give a damn. Long after David Lammy, long after all these people, our mark on Scotland, our mark on the UK will exist, and we'll be very proud of that. He's the greatest guy with the biggest heart. Unbelievable visionary, tough as nails. Every single one of us turned out well. Hard workers, no games, no drugs, no nonsense. He's a guy, so I'll just give you a little story. I went into his room every single day as I went to school, and he always looked at me. He goes, Eric, no drinking, no drugs, no smoking. Okay, let me say that again. No drinking, no drugs, no smoking. You better do well in school, right? And that's how we always went off. But he still calls us, my boy, right? And he's like, I know he's a 40-year-old who runs a $7, $8, $10 billion company, but he's still my boy, right? He might be old, he might have gray in his mustache, but he's still my boy. And now he's an incredibly loving guy.
How's your father's ear, by the way?
It's healing. It's doing much better. Much better.
What do you make of all the nonsense online, saying, especially from sort of militant leftists who are saying he wasn't shot, it was shrapnel, rubbish like that?
It's infuriating.
Yeah.
It's infuriating. And then you have Google that scrubs the search terms. You type in Trump assassination, it doesn't even come up. You want to talk about a corrupt, awful world where they're trying to hide that because they think somehow that hurts them or benefits somebody else or whatever it may be. It's awfully sick. I mean, when your media is being censored like that, when Google searches are erasing history and propagating revisionist history, the whole world sees it. everybody in this country sees it. Everybody in the United States sees it.
I did it yesterday. Elon Musk tweeted about the fact if you type in Trump rally into Google, all comes up as Kamala Harris. You know, how her reinvigoration from a militant leftist into, you know, this god that can't be touched. I saw it myself firsthand.
You know, it's funny, the media was mocking her. They spent the last 4 years mocking her, and then all of a sudden, you know, Biden's forced out, and all of a sudden she walks on water. It's really an amazing thing. But generally speaking, in our country, you know, people don't trust the media anymore. They don't, you know. For the last 3.5 years, they were talking about how Biden was a vibrant, articulate, well-spoken, healthy man. He walks out on stage at a debate, and everybody realizes that that's just not true. And they knew it wasn't true, but he walks on a stage and it just reinforces the fact that it wasn't true. They realized two things: that Kamala Harris was lying to them, and that the media was lying to them, the entire media. And the distrust of the mainstream media in the United States is the biggest it's ever been, and that's why we have so many independent journalists who have been doing so well.
Yeah.
You know, people with their own voices. Hey, Nigel's a great example, and I consider Nigel a friend, but people with their own voice who can just be honest.
Talking of Nigel, of course, he's an MP now. He's just won a seat in our parliament. He's still got a show on GB News. When was the last time you spoke to him? Did he manage to speak to your father after the shooting?
I saw Nigel at the convention in Milwaukee. I also saw him in Iowa. I believe it was Iowa during the primary process, and he's fantastic. Last year, he was at Trump Turnberry doing a great interview that was seen around the world, and so everybody remembers that interview. It was amazing. Beautiful sunny day looking over Kintyre and Ilse Craig, and you know, obviously the most incredible panorama you've ever seen. But no, Nigel's been a great friend, and he's been a warrior, and he's somebody we have a lot of respect for.
Yeah, I think he was, you know, back in the early days, 2015, maybe 16, when your father was running during the primaries. It was Nigel who was putting his head above the parapet and, you know, trying to tell people, you know, this guy isn't what the media is portraying. And your father, I guess, has recognised that. And
absolutely.
He's quite big on loyalty, your dad, isn't he?
He's big on loyalty, absolutely. He's big on loyalty. He's also big on people that have backbone. And very few people I've come to realize actually really truly have backbone.
Just quickly, finally, on Nigel, he's just won a seat in Parliament, so I'm not sure whether this could happen, but would you or your father like to see him maybe in some sort of position or as an intermediary between your administration and maybe the UK Labour government?
Yeah, well, I'm sure my father would love that. In some way, shape, or form, I'm sure my father would love that. But listen, I think irrespective, I go back to the relationship, and you know, forget about the comments you were mentioning before in terms of, you know, some random minister who says something nasty to get, you know, clickbait. My father, as Commander-in-Chief of the United States, there will be no better ally in the United Kingdom than Donald Trump. I truly mean that. He loves this nation. He loves this country. He loves this part of the world. We're here all the time. We employ people in it, as I said before, and he adored the Queen, as you mentioned before. He knows the King very well. We've known the King for years, and I'm telling you, he's going to be the greatest president for the West the UK has ever seen.
Just on the royals, of course, Harry and Meghan, you're sort of taking custody of our Harry at the moment. Joe Biden apparently was protecting the release of his visa information. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the row that was going on whether he lied or not about taking previous drug use on his visa. And Joe Biden was accused of protecting the release of that visa. If and when your father is re-elected, will he be open to pushing for the release of that visa? And if it is found he was lying on his application, Prince Harry, would he be happy to have him in the country still?
Listen, I don't know. I don't want to get into royals, and what I can tell you is my father had so much respect for the Queen, as did I. My mom knew so many of them for years. I think you probably know that. Had a great relationship with Diana and everyone else, and you know, that's a very sacred kind of institution, and you can happily have those two back. We'll happily send them back from America. You can have them back over here, but I'm not sure if you guys want them any more than we might not want them anymore. They feel like they're on a little bit of an island of their own. But in terms of what that institution looks like, in terms of the palace, Buckingham, one of the most incredible places I've ever been. I've been to a few state dinners there, and it's beautiful and should be cherished by this country because it's something that has such elegance and history and longevity, and it's such part of the brand of really what the UK is, and I do think it should be cherished, and I think it's beautiful. And listen, you can always have bad actors in anything. You can always have, you know, spoiled apples in every orchard, but the institution of the royal family is beautiful, and it's something that's really actually admired by a lot of Americans, and I think that should be protected.
Mr. Trump, thank you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you, my friend.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks.
My thanks to Ben Leo for a cracking interview with Eric Trump, Donald Trump's son. Brilliant stuff. Well, more papers to come, the Mail on Sunday and the Times, plus a very unique interview, a lady that had a health episode and suddenly started speaking with a Swedish accent. She'd never been to Sweden. It's an extraordinary story. That plus the papers next.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Should Prince Harry have accepted an award named after a US war hero at a glitzy ceremony last night? People begged him not to, but he did it anyway. It's time for tonight's head-to-head. Well, Prince Harry paid tribute to the eternal bond between mother and son as he appeared alongside his wife, Meghan Markle, at the glitzy ESPY Awards, dubbed the Sporting Oscars last night. The Duke accepted the Pat Tillman Award, named after a US war hero, for his Invictus Games work. But Harry's decision to accept the award was shrouded in controversy after more than 76,000 people signed a petition demanding he reverse his decision. Well, speaking last night, Harry paid tribute to Pat Tillman's mother, Mary. But that comes after Mary Tillman slammed his decision to give Prince Harry the gong, saying, "I am shocked as to why they would select such a controversial and divisive individual to receive the award. There are recipients that are far more fitting. These individuals do not have the money, resources, connections or privilege that Prince Harry has." So tonight I'm asking, should Harry have actually accepted the award? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/yoursay, tweet me at GBNews, and make sure you take part in our poll. But going head-to-head on this now, a former royal butler, Grant Harold, and the journalist and broadcaster, Laurie Turner. Thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Laurie, I will start with you. I mean, the mother didn't want Harry to have it, but he did it anyway. What do you think?
I just think it's incredibly tone deaf. He seems to have an amazing ability to not read the room. It wasn't like this was a surprise because the opposition to him getting this award had been growing. So he had the chance to say, actually, I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to accept the award. But he didn't.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. More papers in a moment, but lots of messages coming in. gbnews.com/yoursay. I had a debate about the BBC and about whether they have a case to answer in relation to the Hugh Edwards scandal. Alan, who is a GB News member, says the BBC's so-called stars' salaries are just a joke, and we're paying them for what exactly, and their pensions. Well, Alan, you're absolutely right, because Hugh Edwards wasn't only just paid almost £500,000 a year, £200,000 of which was paid after he was suspended. But he's got a gold-plated pension as well, which is reportedly worth, are you ready for this, 300 grand a year for the rest of his life. Who do you think is going to be paying that? It's you and me. We really are mugs, aren't we? For the privilege of owning a television set. How about this? The BBC need to do more background checks on their employees like the NHS does. DBS checks. I totally agree. You get a presenter on the BBC, you're going to have to scan their phone, do a full search of the hard drive, go through their WhatsApp and just hope there's nothing nasty in there. How about this? Let the BBC stand on its own 2 feet and not rely on the licence fees, says Alan. We also have Oh my goodness, let's have a look at this. Hugh Edwards was caught out, so he played the mental health card, is a comment from Adrian. Now, Adrian, I don't have evidence for that, but you're entitled to make that comment. A big response also to Roger Bolton, who suggested that the BBC was not balanced. This from Jenny, Jean, I should say. Jenny, it's Jenny who's a GB News member. Hi, Mark, that ex-BBC executive obviously hasn't watched much of GB News, saying it's not balanced. Just spouting the BBC narrative that GB News is biased. It most certainly isn't. Far too many lefties get airtime. It's just that the nonsense they spew is challenged, rightly so. Well, Jenny, let me tell you, the mantra of this show is, first of all, as you know, we don't do boring. I just won't have it. Not on my watch. But the other mantra is that Mark Dolan tonight is the home of diverse opinion. And I love it when we debate stuff, and I love it when we don't agree, because it's more interesting. It's more educational. Hang out with someone you don't agree with. You might learn something. If only they got the memo at the BBC, ITV and Sky. OK, a couple of other messages before we get to the papers. Gary says, I read The Sun, so does that make me dangerous and far right now? I will wear those badges with pride. I do think that Keir Starmer is in a bit of a corner now, politically, because he made that speech after the appalling, disgraceful riots in Southport on Tuesday. But it strikes me that he's taken the path of least resistance by suggesting that all this trouble is the far right and it's just horrible extremists, and all we've got to do is have a police state and clamp down on them and slam them into the back of a police van. I don't think that fixes the problem. I think that what you have to do is understand why lots of people in this country are angry about legal net migration. We know the figures, 700,000 in a year. There's a city the size of Leeds in a year. And illegal immigration, people entering the country, coming off boats, sometimes running for the hills. OK, if you think that's acceptable, I can't help you. I don't agree with you. That is deeply wrong. People are angry about it. So in terms of far right, Reform UK, this is a mainstream political party now led by Nigel Farage. 4.1 million people voted Reform. Are they all far right? I have my doubts. OK, folks, listen, we're waiting for the papers, but I'm delighted to say that I'm joined now by a very special lady who has an extraordinary story. Georgina Gailey is pleading for help after she developed a Swedish accent despite never having visited the country. Georgina's speech changed during a phone call with her sister 3 years ago. And after rushing to hospital fearing she'd had a stroke, doctors diagnosed her with the very rare condition of foreign accent syndrome. I'm delighted to say that Georgina joins me now. Georgina, thank you for your courage and bravery coming on the show and talking to me. Lovely to meet you. Good evening. What is your original accent? Where are you from, Georgina?
I'm actually from Hillingdon, Middlesex. And so I've very much got a London accent.
Yeah,
well,
so
I did have.
Was it a sort of Queen's English or a little bit of Cockney London? What was your accent?
No, I think it was very much Queen's English. So, but it's nothing like that now, I can tell you.
When did you notice a change in the way you were speaking, Georgina?
Well, it was after when they suspected me having this stroke, and I started to just speak so differently, and lots of pronunciations are not as they were. So, you know, as time has gone on, it's become more acceptable with friends and family, but people still just think I'm from another country. So, you know, I have to go day by day, but it is actually, there is some link there with FND, which is a functional neurological disorder. And it is not just the voice that has changed. My coordination, everything has changed as well. And there can be days when I have hardly no mobility whatsoever. There can be days I have no speech for up to about 4 or 5 days. So I have no speech. There is no recognition of shapes of words. And as my speech goes slower, my mobility goes along with it, as does my thought path with my brain. It is much slower.
And this must, Georgina, this it must really get you down. Can you tell me how it's impacted your life?
Well, it's impacted tremendously my career. I was happy, working, going along merrily, doing people's feed, and I was very happy in my life. But now it is really from one day to the next, from one sleep to the next. I can wake up and be completely different. My accent is not necessarily like this. Sometimes I can sound more European. So it makes me feel very, it's like a puzzle with the piece missing and it just won't get back. It's very sad.
Georgina, I wish we had longer. My heart goes out to you and I hope you're able to recover from that awful syndrome. Eddie the Eagle Edwards on tomorrow's show. Weather next.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It turns increasingly unsettled over the next 24 hours or so, particularly across the northwest of the UK. And that's down to an area of low pressure just sat to the northwest, bringing outbreaks of rain, stronger winds. The rain turning increasingly heavy by Monday across western Scotland. The Met Office warning out there could be some local disruption. A fairly quiet end to Saturday and into the early hours of Sunday, though cloud does thicken across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland later, with some patchy outbreaks of rain here, but for most it will be dry. Temperatures are largely staying in double figures, but a bit more comfortable for sleeping compared to recent nights. So Sunday morning, cloudy picture across western Scotland first thing, outbreaks of rain here, but brighter towards the northeast, the Northern Isles as well, seeing plenty of morning sunshine. The cloud extends across parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, with outbreaks of rain. They're largely light in nature. Drier further south and east across the rest of England and Wales, just perhaps one or two light showers, some hazy sunshine in places too. And as we head through the day on Sunday, we'll see further areas of cloud and rain pushing northeastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, perhaps northern England too. Much of the rest of England and Wales largely staying dry, but there will be quite a lot of cloud around, perhaps one or two showers. Best of the sunshine across southern and southeastern areas, temperatures here reaching around 23 or 24. Cooler further north and west you go, 16 or 17. With breezy conditions across western Scotland. On Monday, we can see heavy rain across Northern Ireland, Scotland, some local disruption possible due to that heavy rain through the day, with the Met Office warning out until around 9 p.m. Drier further south and east, temperatures are reaching around 26 or 27, so feeling a little warmer, then cooler and more unsettled later in the week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself